There are two kinds of suburban mornings. The peaceful kind, where you sip coffee, birds chirp, maybe your dog licks your toes, and the worst thing you face is whether to mow the lawn today. And then there's the kind where the HOA decides to drop a complaint on you like a heat-seeking missile. This story? Oh, it's the second kind. My crime? Brace yourself. My driveway was too bright. Yep, apparently my fresh concrete was reflecting the sun like a disco ball aimed at Karen's living room, and in her mind, that was practically an act of suburban terrorism. Forget burglars, forget traffic hazards, forget actual safety issues. No, the real menace to our neighborhood peace was the reflection of my driveway disrupting Karen's soap opera hour. Now, you've probably heard of people getting HOA letters about unapproved fences or lawn heights, or your garage door is painted the wrong shade of beige. That's garden variety pettiness. But when someone tells you your driveway is too bright, that's a complaint so absurd it crosses into performance art. That's when you realize you're no longer living in a neighborhood, you're starring in an HOA sitcom written by Kafka. And I had two choices. Play along and darken the driveway with some dull paint, or escalate the nonsense until NASA could probably see my yard from space. Guess which option I picked? Exactly. I didn't just darken the driveway, I turned it into a void, a cosmic abyss, a VantaBlack vortex in the middle of Pleasant View Estates. This is a story of how one complaint about glare turned into a suburban legend. The tale of Karen, the HOA clipboard queen, versus me, the accidental mad scientist who decided to weaponize the darkest paint in existence. And we're going to break it down in the only way this deserves. 10 facts, each more ridiculous than the last, complete with meltdowns, police cameos, and a driveway so black it looked like a glitch in the Matrix. So grab your iced tea, adjust your lawn chair, and prepare yourself, because once you go black hole, you never go back. And our descent into suburban chaos begins, of course, with the arrival of the beige police in their natural habitat, the HOA letter of doom. The first shot fired in this war didn't come from cannons. It came from a beige envelope. Thin, bland, tucked into my mailbox like a venomous little love note. If you've ever received an HOA letter, you know that feeling. Your stomach drops, your eye twitches, and you already know it's going to be about something you didn't even realize could be a crime. Inside, the letter was written in that classic HOA tone, a mix of fake politeness and bureaucratic hostility. Dear Resident, which already told me they couldn't be bothered to use my actual name. Then came the accusation. Your driveway generates excessive light and glare, creating a disruption to neighboring properties. Excuse me? My driveway generates excessive light? What is this, a suburban nuclear reactor? Was I secretly housing a death ray in my garage? The letter cited Bylaw 11C, which bans excessive light, noise, or emissions. Now, I don't know about you, but I always thought emissions meant car exhaust or pollution. Nope. In HOA land, apparently concrete is now a weapon of mass destruction if it dares to reflect the sun at the wrong angle. And of course, the letter carried the usual threat. Failure to correct the violation would result in a fine. $50 a day? That's right, my driveway was now a financial time bomb. I picture Karen writing that letter, perched at her kitchen table with her light meter app open, muttering like a Bond villain, "Yes, yes, soon his glare will be mine to control." It was absurd, it was hilarious, and yet it was real. My fresh driveway, poured with my hard-earned money, was now too bright for community harmony. Which begs the question, when did suburbia turn into a dystopia where concrete gets you fined? At that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about a driveway. This was about power. The HOA loves control, and Karen loved nothing more than wielding that control like a weapon. My driveway was just the latest excuse. But here's the thing. I wasn't going to play by the script. Most neighbors would have groaned, slapped a coat of brownish paint on the driveway, and prayed to the beige gods for forgiveness. Not me. I wasn't about to let Karen win this round. Because if you thought the complaint itself was ridiculous, wait until you hear what exactly Karen was so offended by. The suburban glare heard round the block. Let's be real. A driveway is not supposed to be controversial. It's a slab of concrete, you drive over it, kids chalk on it, Amazon packages die on it. That's its entire job description. But in Karen's world, my driveway had suddenly become a neighborhood supervillain. Here's what happened. The sun sets at just the right angle in the evenings to bounce off my brand new, perfectly smooth driveway. Now, most people wouldn't even notice. Maybe they'd squint, maybe they'd move their chair a few feet. Not Karen. Oh no. Karen treated that glare like it was a laser beam aimed straight at her retinas. She actually complained that during her afternoon soap opera binge, the light bouncing off my driveway hit her window, reflected onto her TV, and ruined her viewing experience. According to Karen, my driveway was personally responsible for ruining General Hospital. Forget the actors, forget the writing, it was my driveway that was destroying the drama. And of course, she didn't just mutter about it. She documented it. She stood outside one afternoon, phone in hand, taking photos of the sunlight bouncing off my driveway like she was building evidence for a Supreme Court case. I swear she probably has an entire folder on her laptop labeled driveway crimes. Neighbors started whispering too. Did you hear about the glare? One asked. Apparently, it's blinding at 5 o'clock sharp, as if my driveway was some kind of suburban Stonehenge aligning with the solstice. And one guy even joked, maybe you should rent it out as a solar panel, and honestly, not a bad idea. But here's the kicker. Glare isn't even against the rules. The bylaw says excessive light. My driveway wasn't a searchlight, it wasn't a rave, it was just concrete. But Karen, bless her heart, treated it like a weapon of mass reflection. At first, I laughed. I mean, come on, too bright? That's not a real problem. That's a Seinfeld episode. But then I realized she was dead serious, and the HOA was backing her. Suddenly, I wasn't just a guy with a driveway, I was public enemy number one in Pleasant View Estates. And if you thought this petty glare drama was the height of HOA nonsense, oh, buckle up, because things only get weirder when you meet the rulebook gymnastics Karen tried to pull off next.
If you've ever seen an HOA rulebook, you know it's less a guide to community living and more a suburban Necronomicon. Half the clauses are vague, the other half are power-tripping gold mines, and together they create the perfect breeding ground for Karens with clipboards. Karen's weapon of choice? Bylaw 11C. No property shall generate excessive light, noise, or emissions. Now, when most people hear excessive light, they think floodlights blasting at midnight. They think neon beer signs in a window, or Christmas decorations that look like Vegas exploded. They don't think concrete. But not Karen. Oh no. She stretched that bylaw so hard it needed a chiropractor. According to her interpretation, my driveway was generating excessive light emissions by existing in the path of the sun. In other words, I was in violation of HOA law for being on Earth. And here's the wild part. She didn't just complain. She made it sound like my driveway was a threat to national security. In her report to the board, she wrote that it caused visual disruption, eye strain, and reduced quality of life. She might as well have said it was interfering with satellite signals and giving her migraines. The board, bless their souls, actually entertained it. They held a special review session where Karen presented her case. Imagine it, her standing in front of a projector, clicking through slides of my driveway like she's briefing the Pentagon on a terrorist threat. Slide 1, glare at 4:52 p.m. Slide 2, glare at 5:07 p.m. Slide 3, impact on my afternoon soaps. I wasn't invited, of course, because heaven forbid the accused actually be present at their own trial. No, I just got the letter afterward. We have reviewed the situation and found that your driveway may be in violation of Bylaw 11C. You are required to mitigate the glare by repainting or resurfacing to reduce reflectivity. They wanted me to repaint my driveway because it reflected sunlight. That's like asking the sun to tone it down because it's being a little too extra. The kicker? They even suggested earth tone paints. Because naturally, in HOA land, everything must blend into one giant beige blob. Beige fences, beige houses, beige garages, and now beige driveways. The HOA doesn't want a neighborhood. They want a sepia photograph from 1973. At that point, I had a choice. I could either bow down, buy some approved taupe driveway paint and kiss $400 goodbye, Or I could do the one thing Karen and her minions never saw coming. Fight absurdity with absurdity. And if you know me, you already know which path I took. Because while most people would have just rolled on a fresh coat of beige, I decided to get creative. And my first attempt at peace, let's just say it didn't go according to plan. Believe it or not, I actually didn't just jump to painting my driveway into a cosmic void. I actually tried to play nice first. I went down to the local hardware store, walked past the cheerful displays of mulch and patio furniture, and asked the paint guy, "Hey, got anything that makes concrete less shiny?" He gave me a blank stare, then pointed me toward the sealant aisle. I picked out a low-sheen, medium-gray sealant that promised to reduce glare and provide long-lasting protection. Perfect. This wasn't compliance, this was compromise. A driveway makeover with just enough dullness to calm Karen down. I spent an entire Saturday rolling that stuff on like I was trying to baptize the concrete in matte finish. When I was done, it looked slightly darker. Less fresh concrete runway, more dull sidewalk. Problem solved, right? Wrong. 2 days later, I caught Karen standing at the edge of my lawn, phone out, waving it around like she was on a paranormal investigation. Turns out, she had downloaded a light meter app. That's right. She was actually measuring the brightness of my driveway with the same enthusiasm a ghost hunter measures ectoplasm. When I stepped outside, she turned and declared, "It's still a glare hazard. Your sealant has not sufficiently reduced reflectivity." Like she was the world's first certified glare inspector. I wanted to laugh, but her seriousness was almost impressive. Imagine dedicating your life to waging war on reflected sunlight. Imagine getting up in the morning, sipping your coffee and thinking, "Today, I'm going to ruin my neighbor's life because their concrete is too sparkly." She didn't even stop there. She filed another complaint with the HOA. The letter arrived 2 days later. "Your attempted mitigation was insufficient. The board still considers the glare disruptive. Further action is required." Insufficient. Like I was a failing student in some kind of suburban science project. That's when I snapped. That's when I realized logic wasn't going to work, compromise wasn't going to work. Karen didn't want a solution, she wanted control. And if there's one thing I love more than peace, it's turning pettiness into an art form. So I tossed the sealant roller into the garage, sat down at my computer, and typed 5 words into Google that changed everything. Darkest paint in the world. And oh boy, did I find it. Because if Karen thought my driveway glare was a problem, she was about to learn what happens when you weaponize the void itself.
Here's the thing about the internet. It has an answer for everything. Sometimes that answer is helpful, sometimes it's cursed, and sometimes it's exactly the nuclear option you didn't know you needed. My search for darkest paint in the world didn't just lead me to paint. It led me to art history, scientific rivalry, and the kind of drama usually reserved for gladiator arenas. Enter VantaBlack. Now, if you don't know, VantaBlack is less a paint and more a cosmic cheat code. Developed for aerospace and military use, it absorbs 99.96% of visible light. Put it on something, and it doesn't look painted. It looks like a hole in reality, like someone photoshopped an eraser over the object. Scientists use it to eliminate stray light in telescopes. Artists fight over who gets to use it. And me? I was about to use it to ruin Karen's entire worldview. Problem? VantaBlack isn't exactly sold at Home Depot. You can't just stroll in and say, "Hey, where's the aisle for void materials?" So I did the next best thing. I found a commercial ultra black paint designed to mimic the effect. Not quite 99.96%, but close enough to turn my driveway into a suburban black hole. The reviews were hilarious. Hard to apply, but worth it. Looks like staring into nothing. Terrified my cat won't walk on it. Perfect. The moment I ordered it, I knew this wasn't just about fixing glare anymore. This was about escalation. This was about taking Karen's complaint and turning it into an HOA horror story that future generations would whisper about at block parties. I imagined her face, stepping outside, expecting a dull, compliant taupe, and instead, seeing a driveway that swallowed light, hope, and maybe her will to live. This wasn't compliance, this was malicious compliance on steroids. But here's the kicker. I couldn't do it alone. Because painting an entire driveway with the world's darkest paint isn't exactly a one-person job. It requires preparation, patience, and ideally some muscle. Enter Manny and S. Manny was an older contractor I'd worked with before. Mustache, trucker hat, perpetually unimpressed. His buddy S was younger, wiry, and always down for chaos. When I explained the plan, they both stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "You want us to paint your driveway black?" Manny asked. "Not just black," I corrected. "The blackest black on earth." They exchanged a look, shrugged, and S finally said, "Triple pay?" Done. And just like that, Operation Black Hole Sun was underway. And let me tell you, watching two grown men roll cosmic darkness onto a suburban driveway, that was the moment I realized we weren't just fixing a complaint, we were building a legend. The day of reckoning arrived on a Saturday. Sun high, neighbors mowing, kids on bikes, and me standing in my yard with two contractors about to commit what was basically suburban war crimes with a paint roller. We prepped the surface, power washed the concrete, and laid down the primer. Neighbors started noticing. First, Mrs. Thompson walking her golden retriever slowed to watch. Then Big Mike from 3 houses down pulled up a lawn chair. Within an hour, it looked less like a home project and more like a neighborhood tailgate. Then came the first test stroke. Manny dipped the roller, applied it to the concrete, and stepped back. The effect was instant. The spot didn't look painted, it looked gone, like someone cut a hole in the world. The crowd gasped. S laughed nervously and muttered, "Dude, that's creepy." We kept going. Roll after roll, the driveway disappeared in the shadow. Birds avoided it, kids pointed and whispered. Even the dog refused to step on it, skittering around like it was a portal to another dimension. By the time we covered half the driveway, the scene had transformed into a block party. People brought out folding chairs, sodas, even snacks. Mrs. Thompson offered cookies. Big Mike was narrating the whole thing like a sports announcer. "And there goes another roller pass. Folks, we are witnessing history." Meanwhile, I could feel Karen's eyes burning from across the street. Her blinds twitched. Her silhouette appeared. She was watching, waiting, probably rehearsing her complaint in the mirror. And when we finally finished, the effect was undescribable. 60 feet of pure void stretched from my garage to the sidewalk. In the bright afternoon sun, it didn't shine, didn't reflect, it just absorbed. Standing there, it felt like staring into a black hole, like if you stepped on it, you might not come back. Neighbors applauded. Manny and S high-fived. And me? I just stood there, soaking it in, proud that my driveway was no longer just a slab of concrete. It was performance art. It was protest. It was weaponized pettiness. And then came the real test, when the sun hit it at peak glare hour. Everyone braced for reflection. Karen peered through her blinds, ready to pounce. And then nothing. No glare, no reflection. Just silence. My driveway had absorbed the very sunlight Karen feared. It worked. Too well. Because while Karen wasn't blinded anymore, she was about to be something much worse. Humiliated. And humiliation, oh, that's where the fun really begins. Because Karen's meltdown was about to hit Shakespearean levels, complete with melted flamingos.
Now, if you've ever met a suburban Karen, you know she has two great loves in life: enforcing rules and lawn decorations that scream, "I peaked in 1997." In this case, her pride and joy were a pair of hot pink flamingos that guarded her flower bed like tacky little sentinels of the HOA empire. These flamingos had been there for years. Through storms, through snow, through garage sales and neighborhood drama, they stood tall, neon defenders of Karen's kingdom. But then came my driveway. You see, ultra-black paint doesn't just absorb light, it absorbs heat. By mid-afternoon, my driveway wasn't just dark, it was a skillet. The air above it shimmered like a mirage. It was less front yard and more DIY Death Valley. The collateral damage? Karen's flamingos. At first they just leaned a little, like they were tipsy after one too many margaritas. But then, under the relentless suburban sun bouncing off my void of darkness, they began to warp. Their skinny legs softened, their proud plastic beaks drooped, and their once cheerful poses melted into abstract tragedy. I'll never forget the moment Karen discovered it. She marched outside in her visor and orthopedic sandals, clipboard in hand, ready to document my latest crime against suburbia. But when she spotted her beloved flamingos, she froze. Her jaw dropped. Her eyes widened. And then came the sound. A shriek so loud, dogs 3 streets over started barking. She cradled one melted flamingo in her arms like Simba in The Lion King. "Flossie, no!" she wailed. Neighbors peeked out their windows. Kids on bikes stopped mid-pedal. It was Shakespearean. It was operatic. It was beautiful. The irony was too delicious. She had complained my driveway was too bright, and now it was so dark and hot, it literally incinerated her lawn ornaments. My concrete had become a flamingo graveyard. Did I feel bad? Maybe for about 0.3 seconds. But then I remembered the fines, the light meter app, the ridiculous glare complaints. Nope, this was poetic justice served molten hot. And of course, Karen being Karen, she didn't stop at griefing. Oh no. She turned her rage into action. Clipboard shaking in one hand, melted flamingo in the other, she stormed across the street and shouted, "This is a hazard! I'm calling the police!" And that, my friends, was the exact moment I realized we had officially crossed into sitcom territory. Because if you thought melted flamingos were the climax, just wait. Things went from tragic comedy to full-blown absurdity the moment law enforcement arrived to inspect my driveway. There are certain phone calls no police officer expects. Bank robbery? Sure. Noise complaint? Standard. But my neighbor's driveway is too dark? That's not in the training manual. Yet 20 minutes after Karen's meltdown, a squad car rolled into Pleasant View Estates, 2 officers stepped out, one older, grizzled, with the permanent frown of a man who's seen too many petty disputes. The other, younger, fresh-faced, grinning like he already knew this was going to be the dumbest call of his career. Karen rushed to them. Flamingo remained still in hand, waving dramatically like she was presenting Exhibit A in a courtroom drama. "Officer, thank God you're here. His driveway is a hazard. It's illegal. It destroyed my property. Look at what it did to Flossie." The younger cop bit his lip to stop from laughing. The older one sighed, rubbed his temples, and turned to me. "Sir, can you explain what's going on here?" I gestured toward the abyss stretching from my garage to the street. "I painted my driveway black. That's it. Black paint, perfectly legal. HOA didn't say I couldn't." The officers walked over, tapped the surface with their boots, even knocked on it with their knuckles. It made a dull, solid thud. One of them squinted at it and muttered, "Man, it's like looking into a hole." Karen erupted, "See? It's unnatural. It's dangerous. It's sucking the light out of the neighborhood." The young cop finally lost it and snorted. "Ma'am, with respect, your neighbor painted his driveway. That's not a crime."
Karen's face turned crimson. "But it melted my flamingos," she shrieked, thrusting the mangled plastic pink at them like it was a crime scene photo. The older cop didn't even blink. "Ma'am, flamingos aren't evidence, and driveways aren't supposed to be cool to the touch in July." Silence. Glorious silence. The crowd of neighbors watching from their porches burst out laughing. Big Mike nearly fell off his lawn chair. Kids were recording on their phones. Karen was officially losing in the court of public opinion. The cops wrapped it up quickly. "Sir, your driveway is unusual, but it's not illegal. Ma'am, unless you can show me a law against the color black, there's nothing we can do." And with that, they got back in the cruiser and drove off, shaking their heads and chuckling. Karen, meanwhile, stood frozen on the curb, clutching her melted flamingo, watching her suburban empire crumble one absurd moment at a time. And that's when the real kicker hit. Because unbeknownst to Karen, her entire meltdown, the flamingo funeral, the police call, the driveway inspection, had been filmed by Sarah, the neighbor with the world's fastest Wi-Fi and zero patience for HOA nonsense. That video was already climbing towards viral glory. And when the internet gets involved, oh baby, that's when petty problems transform into legends. Which brings us to the viral fallout that changed everything.
If you've been keeping track, by this point the situation had everything: flamingo casualties, police involvement, and a driveway that looked like a rift in space-time. It was already neighborhood legend. But then Sarah uploaded the video. And oh boy, the internet did what the internet does best. It took petty suburbia and turned it into a global comedy spectacle. The clip was short but glorious. It opened on Karen cradling her melted flamingo like Hamlet with York's skull, cut to the cops knocking on my driveway, and ended with the younger officer muttering, "It's just aggressively black." Sarah's caption? When Karen said his driveway was too bright, he painted it into a black hole. HOA wars are getting wild. Boom. Viral. Within hours, it was all over TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. Hashtags like #DrivewayGate, #VantaKaren, #SuburbanBlackHole started trending. Memes exploded. One showed my driveway photoshopped as the Event Horizon telescope photo. Another put Karen's face on Thanos, defeated by my infinity driveway. Someone even edited the flamingo meltdown into slow motion with dramatic opera music. News outlets picked it up too. Local reporters camped outside my house, narrating with the solemnity of breaking political news. Tonight, a driveway painted black has ignited controversy in Pleasant View Estates. Then came national coverage. Headlines like, "Man fights HOA with world's darkest driveway." "When neighbors attack, the suburban black hole saga." "Karen versus VantaBlack, a story of petty revenge." My phone blew up with notifications. Old college friends messaged me. Distant relatives texted, "Saw you on the news, proud of you." Even my boss emailed, "You're famous, just don't let it interfere with work." But the fame came with consequences. The HOA wasn't about to roll over. Nope, they doubled down. Karen rallied her board members and called for an emergency HOA meeting. The agenda? Addressing the driveway situation at 121 Oak Ridge Lane. It was do or die. Beige versus black, Karen versus chaos. And for the first time in years, the HOA clubhouse was packed. Neighbors who usually skip these meetings brought popcorn. Some wore black t-shirts in solidarity. One guy even taped Lego bricks to his shoes like protest fashion. Everyone knew this wasn't just about a driveway anymore. It was about power, pettiness, and whether one Karen could still dictate the lives of 72 homeowners. And if you thought flamingo funerals were dramatic, buckle up, because nothing beats the sight of an HOA president losing control in front of her entire beige army. The HOA meeting began with the same fake formality as always. Karen banged the gavel like she was summoning demons. "Order! Order!" she snapped, glaring at the crowd like a substitute teacher on her worst day. She launched into her PowerPoint presentation, yes, a PowerPoint, with slides showing my driveway from every angle. "This," she declared, "is an eyesore, a hazard, and a blatant violation of community standards."
Slide 1, my driveway at noon. Slide 2, my driveway at dusk. Slide 3, a melted flamingo. The room chuckled. Karen didn't. Her argument was a greatest hits compilation of nonsense. Visual disruption, unity of the neighborhood, resale value. She even claimed the blackness might psychologically disturb children. At one point, she actually said it could attract bats. That was the moment I knew she was spiraling. Then it was my turn. I stood, calm as ever, holding a single poster board with the bylaw printed in bold. No property shall generate excessive light, noise, or emissions. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, Karen said my driveway was too bright, so I fixed it. I made it the least bright thing on earth. You can argue whether it's pretty, but you cannot argue it violates this rule, because this, I pointed to the void on the slide behind me, generates no light, zero. If anything, I've overachieved. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Even the board members, who usually sat stone-faced, cracked smiles. But I wasn't done. This isn't about driveways. It's about control. It's about nitpicking basketball hoops, mailboxes, trash cans left out for an extra hour. And it's about time we reminded the HOA that it works for us, the homeowners, not the other way around. That's when Sarah stood up. She moved, I move, to declare the driveway compliant. A chorus of "second" filled the room. Hands shot up. The vote passed in seconds. My driveway was officially, legally, gloriously compliant. But then came the twist. Another neighbor stood up and said, I move for a vote of no confidence in Karen as HOA president. Gasps. Murmurs. Karen's face went redder than her melted flamingo. She shouted, You can't do that. I am the HOA. But you know what? They could. And they did. Hands went up again. The motion passed by a landslide. Karen was officially dethroned, clipboard stripped, crown of beige shattered. The room exploded in cheers. Neighbors hugged. People clapped me on the back. Big Mike yelled, Long live the black hole. It was over. Karen had lost. The driveway had won. And I didn't just keep my black hole. I helped liberate the neighborhood from her reign of beige terror.